This week on Politically Conscious, radio show host Shelley Wynter says Trump masterfully handled the Israeli-Iran conflict. But do our political experts, Emil and Leo, agree? We break down Trump's foreign policy moves, the irony of the Army's 250th anniversary falling on No King's Day, and ICE protests against Trump. Plus, NYC mayoral candidate Michael Blake explains why ranked choice voting puts power back in the hands of the people. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, everybody? It's your mental activist, Montoya Smith, and welcome to episode 32 of Politically Conscious. As we pop up once a week, you never know when we popping up, but we gonna get you straight to chase. No chaser, right? I'm gonna give you the politics straight, no chaser. I got my man Emil Bryan is rocks with me every week. If you will, Emil, say hello to the people, and we got our returning fill-in co-host Leo Smith holding it down with us this week as well. I'd just like to highlight, hopefully some of y'all have been rocking with us long enough to understand our format here. Again, we just pop up. You have to find us, subscribe, and share. We want more people to hear us after the fact because, again, we don't have a set time each week. But what we do is respond to the actual political news and various clips from around the social media and give you a left, right, and I as an independent middle perspective on what's happening in politics. And between all three of those views, hopefully you can get to the truth is what Emil always like to highlight in his intro. So if you will, Emil, give him a quick intro. We'll go to Leo and we're going to get right into today's discussion.
Emil Bryan, I'm a political consultant, author, speaker, business consultant as well. I advise all the candidates that talk to me, which are few and far between these days, because I'm going to tell you to tell the truth. And you're not going to like it because you're going to want to spin it. But bad news doesn't get better with time, and the people can handle it. And if you don't believe the people can handle it, why are you trying to be a politician?
All right, Leo, let me shoot it over to you. I always tell Emil, I don't think he's getting hired too much trying to tell these politicians to tell the truth. That's what I see out here. But I don't do the work y'all do. So, you know, maybe he's got a few in his pocket that understand that we do want the truth, and that's why we're here. Leo, tell him what you do, brother.
Well, I think Emil is operating by the idea that not all clients are good clients, right? So he's willing to lose a few in this time of alternative facts and truths. I'm Leo Smith from the Alternative Facts and Truth Party, the Republican Party, former Republican National Committee strategist, former Georgia GOP political executive, and still doing work in government relations, political strategy, manifesting policy that empowers people. Engage Futures Group is my company. Happy to be here.
Not glad to have you. So if you're not overwhelmed with the current big news in politics right now, which is the Israeli-Iran conflict, and you're still able to listen to what we got something different for you. So hopefully y'all will understand exactly what we do after we play this cut. But make sure you are sharing this for our watchers out there. Share this with your friends who want to get the facts and truths on politics. That's what we're here for. So we're going to just start with the overall something that I found. And I'll say this for anybody that watched my last Mental Dialogue show. So we do the Mental Dialogue show and Politically Conscious. I actually talked about the immigration, the dilemma of the immigration for African Americans specifically. And so I highlighted that I'm kind of a hands-off person personally, but on the show, Emil helped me on the show. We explore all angles, those who are hands-off, those who are for what's happening for immigration, and those who are against immigration. We explored it from all angles. Again, I pointed out personally, I'm kind of a hands-off person, and I highlighted on the show, if you remember this, Emil, I didn't play this cut from Conscious Lee, and this is a different cut, highlighting where I said, hey, I could be wrong in my perspective, and I'm open to that. So I thought I wanted to set this cut up and play one from Conscious Lee before we get into Shelley's comments that I highlighted on the promotions that we would talk about. So let's start here, and then we'll get to our good friend of the show, Shelley Wynter's cut after this.
At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? How many people living around? 92 million. Okay. Yeah, how could you not know that? I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's
90
million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
you don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a
who
who's calling
Okay,
for the
you're the one who
overthrow of the
claims-
government.
you're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims-
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
No,
You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out.
Number one, Tucker Carlson showing his journalistic skills and exposing them for being war hawks is something that's kind of crazy, and I guess it shows you've been knowing how to do journalism. You was just lost in the sauce of entertainment for Fox News, huh? Number two, Ted Cruz, you figure out ways to embarrass Texans every single day, and you got us agreeing with Tucker Carlson, sir. Number three, the craziest part of that Tucker clip isn't that Ted Cruz not knowing population of Iran, but Tucker Carlson getting Ted Cruz to slip up and admit that the U.S. is already bombing Iran. Number four, y'all don't find it suspicious that Tucker Carlson is standing more on business in this anti-war stance than a lot of our elected officials as Democrats? Number five, this is why I start to piss some of y'all off, but unpopular opinion. If Donald Trump lost the election, we still would probably be in war with Iran because we see that them Democrats can't tell Israel no for nothing. Number six, and backing up the point I made in five, VP candidate Tim Walz was asked if he supports Israel preemptively striking Iran, and he said, the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity of the United States. The war in Iran right now is based on the expansion, which VP candidate Wall says is an absolute fundamental necessity of the United States for Israel to expand. Number seven, what does it mean for a senator to run around demanding that we destroy and overthrow a government and you know little to nothing about the demographics that make up the place? Number eight, this is something Tucker Carlson posted a couple of days ago. It's worth pointing out that a strike on the Iranian nuclear sites will almost certainly result in thousands of American deaths at bases throughout the Middle East and cost the United States tens of billions of dollars. The cost of future acts of terrorism on American soil may be even higher. Those aren't guesses. Those are Pentagon's own estimates. A bombing campaign against Iran would set off a war, and it would be America's war. Don't let the propagandists lie to you. Number nine, imagine how dense Ted Cruz is to have us agreeing with Tucker Carlson.
Hey, Conscious Lee understands his politics better than myself. Again, I moderate between you two experts, and I was curious, any spin, any take, but he just kind of put, in my opinion, held both parties to task, which I think that's the facts when it comes to this Israel thing, if you will. We are absolutely the friends of Israel in the biggest way, and the reason why Israel is propped up as they are in the Middle East, and it is to our interest to do so. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that in a factual way. But Emil, was there anything to peel back from what you heard from Consciously?
Yeah. So the only thing I'll take him to task for, and it's minor, but it's kind of important because in this game, nuance really matters. The full-throated support for Israel from the Republicans is tempered slightly, and I have to be so clear that it's a slight tempering by the Democrats. Here's what I mean. During the campaign, Vice President Harris repeatedly said that she was working on trying to get something in place that would slow down what was happening in Gaza. She wasn't trying to stop it. She was trying to slow it down, ceasefire. There was a bunch of negotiations that were ongoing during the Biden administration. They were not successful. But what they were was an indicator that she was willing to say something other than the party line about Israel. Is there a nuance there? Absolutely, because the bottom line is the people in Gaza were still suffering, and a lot of the weapons that were being used were American weapons, and the flow of those weapons was not stopping unconditionally. So that is definitely splitting hairs, but it does matter because in this game with Israel, in my opinion, America often doesn't show enough absolute nuance in how it approaches the government of Israel versus the people of Israel. And I want to make sure there's that clear distinction because there is a clear distinction between the two.
Leo, any thoughts about what Brother Conscious Lee? Go follow that brother on IG. Any thoughts about what you saw there?
Well, I mean, he's opening up the reality. I love what he said about the reality that for both, whether there was a Democratic president or a Republican president would not matter. Our relationship with Iran is based on the idea way back that came to a head when in 1977 there was this idea that Israel became very clearly a military base for America, pretending to be a state. Not to say that they're not a state, but for our purposes, they are a military base. And, in 1977, our own Jimmy Carter out of the state of Georgia was then president. And I don't think Democrats want to make the mistake again of ignoring the threat of Iran as relates to our military base and our ally, Israel. And because that went woefully wrong, and otherwise good president was maligned. So this is a place where all of us together are really kind of nationalistic and just looking at American interests. And that's why you see that there's, some folks arguing against our presence there, or a bigger war footing there on both sides. And there are many arguing for our war footing there on both sides. So we're in a very interesting place right now.
Yeah, let me ask one quick question. I'm going to go ahead and get to our brother Shelley. Quick question about what you just said, Leo. It seems, and maybe I've bought into the propaganda, so that's what we're here for, to kind of distinguish this. It seems if there's a smaller, powerful portion, a smaller minority of people with a lot of power that push that interest, versus when you just kind of mentioned a lot of people that are for our presence there. Is it a lot of people that are for it, or is there a small minority? It seems that way. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm asking in your opinion. Is it a small, very powerful minority that is pushing that interest, or do you think it really is a lot of people? Just a nuanced question, if that makes sense.
Well, the masses if there is a larger movement, there's a small, powerful minority driving it, whether you're looking at advocacy for Israel, which obviously is a very powerful movement of folks from AIPAC to others. But then you got war hawks as well. I mean, people like, General Michael Kurilla. And then you got people like Lindsey Graham, the senator in South Carolina, who always likes to, sort of make himself sound tougher. So they are a minority, but they're the minority with big voices and who have the ear of Donald Trump. And so Trump is, he's an isolationist in a way. He does not like moving into war. But from Senator Tom Cotton to these generals, they want war. And with Trump trying to also make sure he looks like he's a tough guy, he's really, really, he's not immune into this pressure campaign that these people have on him. And mainly because they are pointing out that, Mr. Trump, we need Israel as an ally and we need to support them because we need to control the Middle East. That's generally the impulse, controlling the Middle East. And though there might be some voices out there that are against us being interventionists, there's enough people out there who might even argue, for instance, if you really want peace in Gaza, peace in Palestine, then you're going to have some more authority in Iran and in Tehran. And so that you can push down all these, what do they call them? They call them proxy combatants and terrorists that get born out of these surrounding countries. So I think in general, Americans would support the idea of America helping Israel to tamp down Iran.
Gotcha. All right, let's go to this cut. Our brother Shelley Wynter believes that President Trump has masterfully handled the Middle East, but I'll let you hear it in his words, and we'll actually start with you, Leo, in the response. I don't know if you've seen this or not. I'm pretty sure Emil has not.
Just for Iran, I think Iran is a murderous, destructive country, or leaders of a country. The people don't feel the same way the leaders do, but the leaders do. I think the Ayatollah is a madman. He's been there 6 decades. 6 decades this guy's been in charge, and he's mad, right? So I'm not an apologist for them. I just don't want boots on the ground, U.S. boots on the ground. I don't want to get dragged into a long, forever war, which tends to happen when we get involved in these things. So I just want to make that clear. But I also am a MAGA guy who voted for Donald Trump in 16, 20, and 24. Many people, right? Many people who are pro-Israel do not like Donald Trump. They're pro-Israel, but they don't like Donald Trump. And it's one of the most fascinating things because Donald Trump might be the most pro-Israel president we've had in recent times. And it's always fascinating to me that the Jewish vote went so heavily against Donald Trump with Joe Biden and with Kamala Harris. And it's always fascinating to me. And I always tell people, many people talk about the African-American vote is locked in for the Democrat Party. Well, by and large, the Jewish vote is also locked in for the Democratic Party for different reasons, but it's still locked in. But it's fascinating to me because Donald Trump right now has masterfully, now they may call him dumb, they may call him, he doesn't know what he's doing, and all the names that they call him. But he is actually, if you pay attention, masterfully managed this whole Israel-Iran thing. Masterfully. And now, right now he holds all the cards. And my point has been that Israel can defend itself. Now, you just heard in the news a news report by Judd Higginbotham, wonderful news team, Atlanta's Morning News, the best in the country, the best ever. Chris Chandler and Sandra Paris and everybody and Judd. But you heard the reporting by Judd where he talked about, he interviewed, I can't remember the guest's name, but they talked about how Iran is weaker. They have less bombs. They can't fight, right? To be effective against the Iron Dome, you almost have to flood the zone with ballistic missiles. Well, Iran can't do that. So they can't fire 100 at a time. They can only fire 10 at a time, and the reason for that is because Israel can see the launchers and pinpoint the launchers and just bomb the launchers. So you can't fire 100. You can only fire 10, 15 at a time. So Israel can't see where they're coming from. Because if you fire 100, by the time you get to 50, Israel knows where they're coming from, and they just send a plane and drop bombs on it. So Iran is already weaker. You just heard it. Oil prices, they're unstable. Their economy is weaker. Hackers just hacked the main Iranian bank that's tied to the Revolutionary Guard. They're weak. They can't fight back. Israel has done its job. They don't really need us. This is what my point has been the whole time. They're a powerful, strong country. And we're hearing all of what's going on. Now, what Donald Trump has masterfully done is by letting Israel do its job, Donald Trump is just showing strength, peace through strength. He's letting Iran know, look, dude, I haven't stepped in yet. We haven't stepped in yet. And you're already being defeated. So either come to the table or you can try and do your hardcore talking, but you're going to have to come to the table at some point. And even Donald Trump, when they said, have you called the Ayatollah? They asked Donald Trump this. And Donald Trump said, no, he knows my number. That's how you talk tough. That's peace through strength. Now, the left, the media, whoever hates Donald Trump, you can say what you want. But this man has handled this entire situation masterfully. Because in his mind, I believe, and this is my humble opinion on this, in his mind, he doesn't want to do anything that sucks America into a long-term war in the Middle East. Nothing. That is not his legacy that he wants to leave behind. He wants to leave behind a legacy of peace in the Middle East. And he's masterfully playing.
Leo, your thoughts. I'll lead with this. It makes sense to me as I listen to Shelley break it out from his logic, and not acting like I'm fully aware. But again, y'all, that's why y'all are here. Y'all are more aware than me. Any thoughts on how Shelley sees what President Trump has done?
No, I think Shelley is right. And I think that he's right to sort of, I think I hear him acknowledging that Trump is leveraging towards a deal. That is ultimately what Trump would like to do is avoid war. He is not a war hawk. He has always been against, he forever wars. He actually ran his first campaign on how, Bush screwed us up with the Iraq war, being president there. He was the person, it was funny because you remember when he criticized Joe Biden on coming out of Afghanistan, Joe Biden feebly tried to make a defense by saying, well, wait a minute, this was your policy. You said that you were going to pull out of Afghanistan if you won again. But no, Joe was so weak that he couldn't continue that message. But that's the truth. Trump has always been, we don't need to be spending our money in our lives on other people's wars. So as Shelley points out, he sort of he signifies monkey, as a Black American tradition would say, and he gets somebody else to be the hawk. Israel, Netanyahu, he's taking advantage of him in order to encourage him, but say, hey, we're just going to be back in the back for support, while using that and threatening to use the bunker buster, which Israel needs in order to strike deep under the earth where the nuclear material is being researched and developed. They need to go deeply. And the only people who can do that is America. We're the only ones with the military technology to do that. Israel is saying, yes, we might want America to help us with that. Trump is using Israel's eagerness to scare Tehran and to make them come to the table to negotiate on Trump's terms. He said, I'll give you 60 days to talk to me. What's fascinating about this, Emil and Montoya, before that 60-day deadline could come up, the person from Iran who had the duty of negotiating with America was killed by Israel.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
So they missed the deadline. Trump says you shouldn't have missed the deadline. We don't know whether collusion is happening there or not. But now Trump is at that place where he's got the big threat out there that we might facilitate and assist. You got crazy Ted Cruz going out there spouting off up the mouth, sometimes saying we're already involved and we're not. So you got all this messaging out there. And we can talk about Tulsi Gabbard and her off messaging, not being in the same message in a little bit. So basically, Iran is, and all reports coming from journalists who have good connections in Iran, they're truly scared. So many of their leaders are dead, and they are truly scared now. So Trump is, as Shelley said, Trump has put this thing in a great place for his leverage.
And let me go here, Emil. I know you're gonna. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. I do want to highlight that right now, based on what I'm hearing, it's consistent. If you recall in our earlier shows where we talked about prior to the election, because we started right before the election, that one of his strengths that was seen was his foreign policy versus maybe Kamala's foreign policy. So this is an area where, in my opinion, he seemed to be consistent. But again, I want to hear your thoughts. But I just wanted to highlight that this seemed consistent when he came into office. We've even had to highlight that, his show, you don't necessarily like the big stick to the degree that he uses it, but you've even had to admit that from time to time there has been some effectiveness. So I'm definitely curious on what you think about what Shelley had to say. Before I do that, let me make sure I'm taking care of some of these comments. One of our watchers, actually viewers, said this I thought was pretty cool. Let me put it up on here real quick. Hold on, what's going on? It's not letting me show it. Hold on 1 second. Just wanted to make sure I'm taking care of our viewers. Thank y'all for watching. Mobile Eye says, basically Trump also believes that Iran tried to unalive him or whatever. So wondering, that what factor is that playing as well? But any thoughts on what Shelley had to say, Emil, or even a response to this comment as well?
Ooh, there was a lot there. First of all, as a veteran, I pull this card rarely, Montoya, but I will pull it out for this one reason. Almost everybody I know who's been in the military does not want to go to war, but we all agree when it's time to go, we go hard. And I say that because when you see war hawks, very rarely are they veterans. There are a few who are war hawks, but most of them are not. Most of them have not seen the carnage war creates. And so I'm going to be the first voice to say war is never okay. And when it is the right solution, you do it violently, you do it quickly, and you bounce. You get out of there. I am a big fan of the Powell Doctrine because of it. Now, having said that, let's talk about what Shelley's talking about. First and foremost, we got to go back to the manufactured crisis with Iran. Why is it manufactured? Because a long time ago, back in 2015, 2014, just before President Obama left office, he created something called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. Now, if you talk to the people who are smart on nuclear weapons, don't talk to the politicians, talk to the nuclear physicists and the nuclear engineers, of whom I have a fairly intimate relationship with at least one or two. The JICPOA worked. Its job was to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. There were inspectors in country. If all of this sounds familiar, it's because when President Trump came into office, he undid all of that very hard work. It took years to get the JICPOA in place. There were inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency on the ground in Iran, where there weren't human eyes, there were video cameras. Not in every single place, but the restrictions in the JICPOA were strong enough to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. That plan of action, we unilaterally pulled out of. That caused the crisis you're seeing today, 9 years later. I'm sorry. I do not agree that Israel should have struck Iran preemptively when we had the JICPOA in place with inspectors on the ground at all the places.
So let me just sorry to interrupt you real quick, but I'm not saying what you're. I don't want to hate to interrupt your train of thought, but and I'm not saying you're saying this, but I just want to highlight this as you're saying it. So in Shelley highlighting how Trump has handled it, just keep in mind he's talking about handling it now. I think he
created it though. That's the problem.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing. Yeah. So what I hear you saying, I want to make sure I'm processing what you're saying. So he's actually led to it being what it is. And
Correct.
when you say I don't agree with Israel striking, I just say I think that has to be removed from the question we're asking right now, because that got done for the reasons you said, but that has nothing to do with how Trump is handling it in the moment now that it happened.
Yeah, but
I'm just trying to make sure that we're
with the politics
on that thought.
This is the problem with politics as played by Trump. You're allowing him to get away with creating a crisis and then talking about how he's handling it. If you want to talk about how he's handling a crisis, hand me something that he didn't start himself. That's the problem. Yes, he's handling it masterfully. Of course he is, because he created it. If we're going to have the discussion, you got to have the full cycle discussion. You can't have half of it, because half of it is what everybody's looking at. And that's the politics. That's the spin. That's the propaganda.
Thank you for that. And Leo, any thoughts to Emil's passion on this as he breaks down?
No, I think it's worthy of it. It's a very good conversation to have with Emil, because, like he said, he's served, he understands what's really at stake here, and we're talking about real loss of life, and so one should be passionate about this. There's been all kinds of moves that one could argue. I just pointed out that the negotiator who would open the door to have robust conversation with American officials was killed by Israel in a strike. Is that intentional? Was that coordinated? Did Trump create that? Did Trump create the situation in Gaza, the support of Hamas, the purchasing of oil from Russia by Iran and by China? I mean, does the drones that are being used to strike Ukraine mostly come from Trump? Trump create all that?
Today. Leo, I'm gonna have a hard conversation today, and it's not that I want to argue with you, but I gotta be blunt. How many nations has Iran invaded? How many people has Iran put out of their homes? How many people have they killed? How many governments have they stated they want regime change over? Because it ain't Iran who's been the aggressor in the ways that we would ordinarily measure aggression. Yes. Shelley's point is that they're madmen, this and the other. First of all, Ayatollah Khomeini, who was around in 1979 for the Iranian Revolution, is not the same leader as Ayatollah Khamenei, who took over in 1989. Yes, he's been there for 40 years, but they've also gone through presidents like Rafsanjani and others who have been reformers. So they've gone through different waves of regimes and regime changes within Iran. That is internal to Iran. When they're aggressive with other nations, of course they should be stopped. Of course they should be.
Emil, do you think
that Iran is the aggressor here is just, I don't see the numbers to support that.
Well, look, the hypocrisy is immense. Okay, so obviously, what I'm about to bring up to you, Emil, there's hypocrisy. Who has nuclear weapons? America does. Israel does. But we're saying Iran can't. Trump wants us to believe that he's not actually interested in a regime change. I mean, he's made that very clear. He said it, that's not his interest, okay? I think that's consistent with him saying he's not trying to change the hearts of anybody in Qatar or Saudi Arabia or anywhere, right? He's made that clear, and I believe him when he says that, okay? But I do think that he is concerned about Iran having nuclear power. And so the question then becomes, do they really have it or not, right? And so
But do we understand the history of that?
Let me do this, Emil, just for the movement of the show. We're going to stay on that because I got a cut that kind of that plays into what y'all just said, so you can kind of continue the conversation. Let me get this cut out. I will highlight we have often a lot of cuts from the Daily Show, Jon Stewart. So there's going to be a comedic effect again, just to bring some fun into this conversation. But a point being made, and of course, our expert will break down what's fact or fiction. See another comment from Mobile Eyes that says they were struck first, right? And I think he's just referring to Iran. And yes, that is the case since you're asking that question. And again, my experts here can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But let's play this cut. I think it plays exactly into what y'all are talking about.
Middle East. We put America first, and that means American interests first.
Our MAGA base, they do not want the.
Hold on, let me set this up. Sorry, I actually cut the clip short, so it actually doesn't include the part I thought I was about to play. So I'll just say what's before what you're about to hear. So Jon Stewart was breaking down how often Netanyahu, if I'm saying his name correctly, has said Iran is close. And so he he put together a bunch of clips and, of course, clowned how Netanyahu in 2015 said they were weeks away. In 2018, they were weeks away. In 2022, I might have the other one wrong. They were weeks away, and it's being said again. And he just clowns them for propping up. That is the reason why we're being aggressive towards Iran, because they're apparently weeks away. And Emil, you've already pointed out through the people that you highlighted earlier in this show that the actual engineers who are aware that they're nowhere close in actuality. So it kind of gets used as propaganda to cover up our real interests. So I thought I had that part of the clip. So I do not have that part of the clip. So I'll let y'all both finish one last thought on what y'all were saying, because I want to move into the home front with this next clip. So go ahead, Emil, finish what you were saying, and Emil give a response, and then we'll play another clip.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mobilize, for your comment. And yes, Iran was the recipient of a preemptive strike based on the words that President Netanyahu said about how close they were to nuclear weapons. But there's been an ongoing campaign for the past decade to decapitate Iran's leadership, nuclear engineering capacity. But remember that America helped Iran start its nuclear program in the 1970s. So this is full circle for us and full circle for the region, that we've been trying to figure out how to help, harm, or hinder Iran in some way, shape, or form, depending on how it's been friendly or aggressive toward the United States. I say all that to say this, that it's not an easy answer, and President Trump probably didn't help himself back in 2016 or 2017 when he pulled out of JCPOA, but now we're here. And yes, to his credit, he's trying to keep boots off the ground, but Ted Cruz just talked about how we probably are doing more than nothing.
Yeah, and that's the spin. So like say, even if we can give Shelley's assessment, at least based on listening to both of you, and I'll let Leo give a final thought here, but based on what you just broke down to, again, that's why we're here to get through the propaganda. Basically what I'm hearing is, for the current moment, Shelley's assessment is relatively correct. However, to be devoid of how it started, which I love your passion on that, Emil, it ends up being relatively propaganda to reduce it to, look at how brilliant he is. And we've quite often talked about this on a lot of issues where Trump creates the tariff issue and then looks smart. So it's kind of like, damn, is it really smart, or is it, I created an issue, now I have to fix it? So maybe you're a good fixer, but let's talk about the fact that you keep starting these issues. And I think that's kind of your point, Emil. Leo, one last thought, and then I want to move to the domestic.
Well, I don't agree that, I'm not sure I can agree that Trump started the issue. And so we can have, that's another discussion for another day. I'm not really seeing it. I'm not really feeling that. However, he is dealing with the issue and adding America's might to the situation. And of course, getting some narcissistic pleasure out of it while he does it as the most powerful man in the world, that he is really enjoying that role more than any other president we've seen in modern times. So he's going to continue to do that. Israel wants him to. Jews in America want him to. The banking industry wants him to. The oil industry wants him to. And he's going to continue to make sure that he does his part to go down into the history books as being a friend of Israel. And as he says, peace. He says it in a different way. Piss. I want peace. You know, is what he says.
Hundreds of Iranians and Israelis would who have been harmed or injured or killed would probably say this ain't peace.
Sure.
Fair enough. All right, shout out to Mickey, the life manager, if I'm reading that correctly, for watching the show. Anybody else want to make comments? We'll definitely try to bring them to the table. All right, let me now bring this to the home front with this right here.
Middle East. We put America first, and that means American interests first.
Our MAGA base, they do not want the United States to be engaged in this.
I don't know anyone that wakes up and thinks about bombing Iran.
She doesn't know anyone who wakes up and thinks about bombing Iran. I got to tell you. I don't think she knows anyone who wakes up and thinks. But credit. I enjoyed that one. But you know what? I'm going to say this. This may surprise some people. Credit where credit is due. I certainly have tremendous policy and, in some instances, space laser differences with these folks. But I applaud any group that is steadfast in a diplomacy-first posture. The only problem with their posture that I see with it is their reluctance to commit America's military to fighting drawn-out and often pointless wars doesn't seem to extend to America.
President Trump should fully deploy the military in the streets. Take back the streets of L.A. Do it and do it fast.
Huh? Doesn't want to be in Iran. He wants to be in L.A. He doesn't want to deploy the military overseas. He wants to save the military for the real threat, us. He's not being hypocritical, just fucking mind-blowing. The MAGA mindset appears to be, we didn't vote for foreign wars. We voted for civil war.
This is a war. The battle for America was going to take place in Los Angeles. The only way to win here is to double and triple down.
The current war that we are seeing waged by the Democrats, by the foreign nationals waving Mexican flags.
The city of Los Angeles is an occupied city. It is time to retake the cities of this country. It is time to use force.
What the f***? They are looking for any pretense. They are looking for any pretense to sick their robot dogs on Democrats. And the strategy that they're using is to inflate the threat that this country now faces, to so rile up their base as to make the left in this country, represented by over 75 million votes in the past presidential election, as a legitimate military target for the United States of America. It's a strategy that's been used before to gin up military conflict. See if you recognize it.
The good people of Iraq, they want a peaceful country. They want security.
The good people of Los Angeles deserve to be secure in their homes.
We're not going anywhere until there is a stable environment.
We're not going anywhere. We're here to maintain the peace.
Liberate Iraq from the tyranny.
Liberate the city from the socialists.
We will liberate the people of Iraq.
We will liberate Los Angeles.
We must! They don't understand yet. We must invade Los Angeles. We cannot have the world's most dangerous people eating the world's most delicious tacos.
Emil, I'll start with you. Obviously, that is propaganda to the highest extent. I'm talking about putting that together, that many clips. But I always appreciate the ability of Jon Stewart to make us think. And I'll let both of you weed through the propaganda. But I think I actually asked Shelley about this personally. I says, what do you think about that dilemma? Because we do know on the issue we were just talking about, for the most part, MAGA is against going to war with Israel or being involved. Like, that's been their take, and they kind of, in a sense, disagree with our appearance to being supportive or potentially putting boots on the ground. Like, that's a understood MAGA difference right now with President Trump in the event that he actually wants to do it. But as Shelley said, maybe he actually doesn't want to do it. He may just be appearing to do it. However, locally, Jon Stewart, in his eyes, is pointing out the hypocrite. What he seems to be pointing out is very hypocritical. Your thoughts on what Jon Stewart is bringing to the table from his perspective?
What's happening in LA is shameful, and I'm not even going to equivocate or try to soften it. The United States Marine Corps is a fighting force that should be protecting America from enemies without and enemies within. And right now, the city of Los Angeles, where my daughter lives and where Leo's daughter once lived, the city of Los Angeles is many things, but what it is not is hostile territory. Why would I be able to walk through Los Angeles, most of Los Angeles, minus, a few gang areas, without any worry that I'm not in America? America is a melting pot. It's a beautiful melange of people, cultures, languages, and other stuff, food. And yet we have these people dedicated to starting and escalating conflict in a city because they don't like its politics, because they don't like how it handles its own affairs. Now, you're not going to get me to disagree with Jon Stewart on this one, because I see the Marine Corps in the city of Los Angeles. I see the National Guard, who was not asked to be federalized. I see them doing law enforcement, which I believe is a violation of posse comitatus. I am not happy right now with this administration's use of America's most elite fighting forces for domestic affairs that do not call for it.
Yeah, and I'll also highlight, when you were on the show Saturday, we were actually looking into, in a sense, why the president, at least when it was just the National Guards before the Marines were employed, we were saying, hey, here's kind of the rule of law of how he could offer the National Guard. I think you've probably seen a lower court has actually decided he didn't follow all the steps that you explained to us on Saturday. You were saying, hey, he has the right to, per se, but it should be in agreement with the mayor. It should be in agreement with you were just kind of walking through the steps on Saturday, but one of the courts supported. You didn't say he was right or wrong. You were just saying, I don't know if he followed all those steps, and one of the lower court agreed.
It's always the rule of law, man. I'm very particular about the rule of law, because that's why it's there, to prevent these things from happening. And the framers of the Constitution were very clear. They didn't want a standing army used like it's being used right now. It is absolutely unconstitutional, and it's against everything that they were trying to fight for against King George III. So we can't just have this conversation as propaganda or not. These are very serious matters, because the whole intent of a standing army, why they were so reluctant to have a standing army, is for what is happening right now.
Absolutely. Leo, your thoughts to Emil, or to what Jon Stewart again played in that cut?
Well, I think Jon Stewart, he's the hypocrisy through comedy is well presented, but it is not apples. It's apples and oranges to compare concerns about ideological movements within the country to our military intervention outside of our country. In other words, I might agree that I take certain measures in my own home to discipline my children or whatever, but I don't have any business in somebody else's home. And so John is he's blowing it up, but I think it's appropriate to blow it up, considering what's going on. The militarization of domestic tranquility is not appropriate. And our founding fathers and our Constitution does not support the idea that whether or not he is breaking the law is going to be proven through the number of times that he is certain to be sued, right? And as you pointed out, Montoya, and see, this is where we are. We have to evaluate our entire legal system, because there's many things that we have agreed, from times of Martin Luther King to times of Emil today, that the law might not have been broken by the letter, and that judge therefore not saying that he actually broke the law in the way that he put the Marines in sort of parallel or walking alongside the ICE agents in the National Guard. So the Marines, he said, they weren't there to actually deal with the people. They're there to just support and protect the National Guard. So he's like walking the fine line with his legal advisors. That's why he always says, I don't know. I'll ask my lawyers. Right. Trump is smarter than people. He is pushing law.
That's why he's never been convicted of his gang activity, because he's never in the gang activity directly. But he does it, and this is what's so frustrating for so many people. And I'm sorry, Leo, I hate to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, because you're right. He knows how to create the firewall.
Real quick. What frustrates people is he's getting away with what we can see. And the problem is he says, well, I didn't do and I didn't do. Well, what kind of leader do you want in front of you? Do you want someone who says, well, you should blame that guy over there. You should blame that guy over there. No, we want a leader who says the buck stops here.
Well, Emil, I'm going to say, but Emil,
I'm not seeing that. What I'm saying is he's able to take credit, but never responsibility.
But Emil, the truth is that there might be 75 million people who want a leader who follows the law, right? Or follows the spirit of Americans' founding or its evolution, because we weren't founded on the spirit of unity and pluralism, etc. But we evolved to believe that that's a core ethos of our values. And so if we want that kind of leader, we're going to have to vote for that kind of leader, because we did.
I agree.
We voted for a leader that said all the things that he's doing. He actually said it before we voted for him.
I agree.
So we're in an ideological war because there is a set of people in America who think that there is an internal war in America. Some of these people are so out there with conspiracy theory, they think that there are aliens walking around in America and we should take over cities to remove the aliens out of the cities. I mean, there are people who have PhDs who say stuff like that. And, you call them right or left, whatever, they're out there. And so Americans there are a lot of Americans who not only want to fight against the ideology that they consider a harm called wokeness, but they also want to fight against some of these crazy conspiracies from Christian nationalism to like get rid of all faiths other than Christianity, and to there's alternative people, aliens taking over, including immigrant aliens. And so when you visit from Georgia and you go to LA, Emil, I do want to say that you're going to notice some stark differences in life, unless you get into the bubbles of Brentwood or you get into the bubble of USC's campus. I mean, look, you might see pot smoke walking around Atlanta, but you generally don't see people doing crack in the middle of the street. You don't see people waving other nations' flags like this is another country, or kind of walking up to you to the degree that you get when
unless it's the Confederate States of America flag, then you will absolutely see that foreign flag flying over the United States.
That's a good point, and you do see it, but you still don't see it as much as you see it in LA with other,
Let me jump in right here and bring something to this, because I appreciate the dialogue that I'm watching between you, and I just want to make sure our viewers understand. Just to give a little extra context, that's what I'm here for, right? Moderating context. And so what I hear is I respect Emil's frustration with what he's saying, because you're in that. To Leo's point, you're in the 75 million who did not vote for this type of leader. Leo's making the point, keep in mind, while you naturally, because that's your position, Emil, you're naturally saying, hey, look at what he's doing. But Stephen A. Smith keeps pointing out Trump is doing exactly what he's saying he's going to do for those who voted for what he's doing. But the reason I'm pointing that out is because sometimes I think the miss that we make amongst us as the people is we're going, look at what he's doing. We're mad at him as if other people are crazy for wanting what they want. And I'm not highlighting who's right or wrong about that. I'm just pointing out that it's a distinction that we must remember. And if to Leo's point, in the event that what we're seeing is something our nation does not want, we're going to have to figure out amongst ourselves of what we want versus always being particularly focused on Trump, in my opinion. I'm just highlighting that because that type of focus can make you miss what's actually happening. And the propaganda, in my opinion, gets used against you most when you're locked in on the actual figure sometimes. I hope I'm making sense with that.
No, you're saying a lot. You're saying, to me, you're making great sense. And the thing that you've said in this show many times is that you can never assume what another person's motivation is for voting for that person. Well, the problem I have is that the sum total of those motivations ends up looking like authoritarianism. It ends up looking like people's rights are being violated. It ends up looking like that the nation is sliding towards something that none of us want. And many of the people who voted for this are now saying, maybe because it's happening to me, I don't like it. Yes, I understand, Leo, that some people who come from different parts of the country, when they come to a place like LA, are going to have shock. But you know what? That shock's been there when they visited New York. That shock was there when they visited, and when people from New York visit rural Georgia, they get shocked. When they get to Apalachicola, they get shocked. America is supposed to be shocking to itself. Why? Because we're different. We're different people from different parts of the nation that do different things. That doesn't make one less American. It makes us a beautiful country and a tapestry, as it's been called many times over. So what we have to do is stop looking at different as bad and ask the hard questions. Is this America too? Because perhaps it is. And perhaps we don't need to go throw our Marines and our National Guard at a problem because I don't like what it looks like, because it's not familiar to me. And that's what I'm seeing. And that's the problem I perceive.
And I'll say this real quick to Mickey, the life manager. She says, I feel so horrible for those Marines. And I've seen on social media people talking about, will the Marines actually act if it were required? And, and the moral responsibility that we as, myself as a former Air Force member as well, we have to contemplate whether the authority that's given to us is a moral authority, and we're not supposed to break it if they ask us to do so. So I've seen that floated around on the internet. And so that's what makes someone like a Mickey, the life manager, say, man, I feel horrible for those young Marines, because it is a reality that they might have to think about. And again, we would never want to see that. So I definitely respect her comment. All right, let me try to rush through these last few clips. I may need some extra innings if y'all got it, but I wanted to highlight the irony of this as I play these two cuts. I think it'll this cut here, it'll make sense. All right.
Please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and First Lady Melania Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, our parade is officially underway. The M16 half-track brings the fight wherever it rolls. A coalition of South Korea, the United States, and other United Nations members.
Solemn.
So I thought it quite ironic that we had the 250th Army's celebration anniversary, and at the same time there was the No Kings protest as well as ICE protests against the actual president. I thought I put up a post on my page that just says, "There's nothing more American than that." That those things happen at the exact same time. So
that's my nation right there. That's the nation I call home. I'm upset because the Army had put together a beautiful plan to unveil, to share it, its 250th anniversary. Like, they had worked 3 years and they presented a proposal to DOD and the president and said that this is how we think we can really kind of share it, because they wanted it to be a recruiting element. They wanted it to be, pride, and the Army's rightly should feel very great, should feel strong, beautifully strong about its 250 years of being America's defenders. But it didn't work out that way. And there are lots of reasons why.
Yeah, an election happened, Emil, and it just coincided with Trump's birthday as well. So the parade probably would have happened in some form or fashion anyway,
Absolutely.
right? But Trump got to preside over it, and we don't like that because we didn't vote for Kamala Harris.
Well, you know, he made it also kind of like let me put it to you this way. If I had the spotlight he has, I may have done something different. And I'm not saying he should or should not have, because he is who he is. But I would have said, yes, it's my birthday, but the Army's bigger than me. And that would have been the last thing you ever heard me say about my birthday would have been.
That's a waste of time, Emil. You're humble. Come on, guy.
That's what I'm saying.
You would have had so who would you have had sitting and getting all the press and engaging as the official political representative of the American military? Would have been Pete Hegseth?
No, I would have absolutely shown up and done my part, but you would not have heard me talk about my birthday but one time, and that is to just let it go. And then we focus on the Army because that's what's really important here. And people would have come to the parade if they felt like it was about the Army. But people, based on his own commentary, as well as lots of propaganda in the press, did not perceive that it was the Army's true celebration, because they had a celebration planned for all over the country that did not happen.
I think that's
he's
sad.
politicized the military, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's sad. I'll just be honest. I think it's sad if people ran with the birthday thing like for real. And I'm not saying they didn't, because I don't watch enough TV to know. So if they ran with it, I just think that's kind of sad. That to me, that's not even the bigger point here. Again, the dichotomy of our country showed up very well with that. I will highlight that I heard my brother Shelley Winters highlight how he didn't want to have anything to do with the No King protesters, because in his opinion, it was completely manufactured. And what was their actual ends to a means? I'm not saying he's wrong in that like some of them were asked, what are you out here for? And the answers were literally all over the place. So that I will give credence to. However, when I listened to my brother Shelley highlight that he thought it was completely worthless, I don't want to have it. I don't even want to hear what they're talking about because it's complete ignorance. I wanted to call in. I didn't have a chance. I was driving, but I was going to call in and says, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's the same absolute ignorance that got us January 6th. And it was not just to put one group against the other, but let's highlight how manufactured things can be off of complete BS. And January 6th was manufactured off complete BS. Again, not to do tit for tat, but to recognize the reality of the country that we're in. People can be driven to the streets in a manufactured way, and we watched it happen on January 6th as well as No King's Day from my perspective. If one of you give me one thought, because I got a couple more cuts if I can steal a few more minutes from y'all, but either one of you just give me a quick thought on my assessment of just what that actually will versus demonizing one side. The reality that we talk about on this show is we're all getting wrapped up into the propaganda and letting misinformation guide us in a lot of our decisions. I'm not saying all of us, but that happens, unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle equally.
To me, we haven't crossed the Rubicon if millions of people can gather and protest the president. And once we do cross the Rubicon, those will be verboten. So what that means is America is still, even though we're shaky, we're still a functioning republic trying to figure out its next steps.
All right, good stuff. Let me play this cut right here so I can make sure I respect both of your time. And this is, again, just bringing everything home here.
No matter right or wrong or indifferent, they will stick together. But they'll find something weak in us, which is a lot, to make us turn on each other, okay? And start saying, yeah, well, y'all shouldn't be saying that about them people. I feel bad. Yes, we feel bad that it's happening. But you think we about to go in front line because we feel bad? Baby, it take a little bit more feeling bad than for me to get up out there. So at the end of the day, if we're next, we sitting there, we understanding what we need to do, huh? We ready.
I don't know what these people are talking about, what this narrative is. This don't have nothing to do with anybody being next. Unless you are an illegal migrant in this country, then that's not even something for you to be worried about. America is a melting pot. America is a place where there's different people from different places that all come together that believe in one thing. Most of us believe in one thing, and we believe that what's best for America ultimately is the thing that is best for everybody. And so as America goes, the world goes. Most of us understand that, especially if you have a certain age. Some people are super liberal. Some people are cloaking this whole protest and this migrant thing, because that's what this is really all about. This is really about Mexicans and people from other cultures that are undocumented, that's not supposed to be here now, trying to play on the emotions of black women, not black men, black women, to try to advocate for them to get out there and protest. And I say that people shouldn't do anything. They should be more in alignment with Trump and making sure that we get these illegal migrants out here.
Leo, I'll give you a thought. That's Antoine Daniels. He's becoming popular on social media, just giving his perspective. The sister obviously was probably from New Orleans based on her accent, just kind of giving her thoughts. But there's this constant conversation. And again, me and Emil tackled this on Saturday, all the different perspectives within the African American community, specifically when it comes to the immigrant issue. And so again, we understand all the perspectives, but what you see there is Antoine saying, hey, I don't know that it's a real thing that we are next, because we see that get propagated when it comes to the immigrant issue. And so we do know that the propaganda sometimes can play to our emotions. And Antoine goes as far as to say, hey, they're playing on a very powerful group, our black women specifically. And I think he highlights that as some form of propaganda. He didn't use the word propaganda, but that's what I take from his take. Any thoughts on what that brother had to say or any part of that conversation?
Well, I don't understand that we necessarily means me, so I don't understand. I agree with the brother in the sense that who's the we when she says we're next? I mean, is she talking about, first generation, fourth generation immigrants to the country? People like me who are the descendants of American enslavement of Africans. I mean,
and I'll say
I don't know who we are.
She's leaning into African Americans that are descendants.
Right. And so I agree with him. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any effort or any even leaning towards an effort to strike out against people because of the color of their skin. There seems to be an ideological attack for certainly. Yeah, that is certain. There's an attack on ideology. No one's really attacking C.J. Pearson, the little young Republican creating black cohorts up in Washington, D.C. called Black Republican Mafia. They're not attacking him. They're not attacking people who are voting for MAGA, who are people of color, unless they have something in common, meaning undocumented, right? Fighting for the undocumented, So, we've got to be clear about that. Don't be manipulated. I don't think this is a manipulation that's only affecting black women. I think there's lots of people who feel compelled to fight for undocumented immigrants. We've had this. That's why our border's been open for so long. The border is now closed. There are a lot of people who thought the border should not only be open, that there shouldn't be a border at all. We got to admit that there are people, black, white, brown, who believe that. And that is something that our law does not support. And now someone is willing to enforce the law in a way that is challenging our identity and about who we are as an Americans and what we believe. And that is a crisis. We are having a crisis of family values as Americans.
We got Kenny77 that says, we will be next. Let's not be ignorant. They are deporting legal residents. So your status as a U.S. citizen will not protect you from the actions of a lawless.
It's not true. They're not deporting any legal residents.
They are. It's true if you're a minor. It's happened already if you're a minor.
Well, the question of whether or not they were legal is
because their parent was deported and they didn't leave the child here. They didn't make an effort to leave the child here. Just because the one parent said, I'll take my child with me, they deported a U.S. citizen with the parent that was not a documented immigrant. So it has happened. And my point, here's what Kenny77 says is historically based, in my opinion. We had COINTELPRO. We know the full might of the United States government has been used to harm the political fortunes of black people in America. We know this. We have the documentation. We've lived it. It's not just COINTELPRO. It happened throughout our history. every time the United States government arrays itself against one group, those forces somehow end up being used to harm Black people in America, especially when we want self-determination, freedom, access to education, and all the things that we've asked for that are not unpatriotic. So I'm not here to say what this administration won't do. I just know what history points to. And history points to us being targeted by the array of forces organized against one group, because once they run out of them, they don't disband the force. They tend to turn it internally.
So let me jump in right here, because I think this is an opportunity, in my personal opinion, to raise our conscious level and understand history. People often say, people always say, repeats itself. And my good friend Shelley once said on my show, and I think he's accurate with this, is quite often what we call repeating itself is actually just viewing human nature. And so I'm highlighting that from this standpoint. I'm a historian myself. Emil, I respect, and some issues you're much more of a historian than myself. So let me give that credit to you. But I feel like I'm a decent historian, just have a love.
You are better than decent.
I'm setting up something, but thank you for that. But I also want to make sure I respect how much I go to you often for the areas I don't know. We can't know it all, right? But I am one thing that I will offer, being the politically conscious show, wanting to raise the consciousness specifically of our community, understanding the effectiveness of how to be involved in politics. I will say to you and Kenny, while I line up with a lot of what you said, but the but is, I don't think we always transpose that history and that human nature with currently what's actually happening sometimes. I'll try to explain it this way and keep it short. So you've heard me say quite often, Emil, that we don't always respect exactly what our ancestors were doing to gain civil rights. Like, we misunderstand it. We have a bad narrative that is provided to us in the public school system. And so we, for example, mistakenly think our ancestors were fighting to be next to white people when they were really just making sure the laws applied appropriately so that we could have a fair opportunity. And I'm talking about just saying and stating it for what it is. The reason I'm highlighting that is because sometimes, while you're right, we can look at that history, there are steps that have been taken to where now this will no longer apply. The birthright citizenship came to be because of our enslaved Africans. It's the only reason it was even a issue in the country, because of who we were, and when they were trying to figure out how to even give citizenship to us as enslaved Africans who were not considered citizens, who were not considered that at all. So to act like, I'm being honest, to act like because of that history, it will come to our door. We're at a stepping stone, and the reality is the birthright citizenship never was meant to apply to anyone but us. And I'm not trying to limit it to us, but I'm just walking us through. When you understand that history properly, I cannot see this anyhow circling back to us because of what our ancestors have already gotten us, and we don't always respect what they were actually doing with the civil rights movement. Because we don't know is why we say this could circle back to us. No, they already got us to that step. That's past us. That's the reality. And now the new step for us is to participate fully through politics, with our economics, and in all the other ways, because the opportunity is afforded to us, and to still fight any systemic issues, the misuse of DEI, the way that it was misused, to fight the CRT being misused the way that it was misused. So there are still issues we must continue to fight, but sometimes we look at that history and think we still have that fight, and I'm saying we have newer fights because our ancestors have already got us to a step to where this is not coming back to us. Go ahead, Leo.
And the newer step, and I love how you close that with an empowering thought, that your political engagement is going to help you evolve the country, and to make sure that this fight, this wrestling in a cocoon, this cacophony of voices turns into a symphony of harmony, okay? But you can't do that unless you get in there and mix it up with folks. And so I understand the impulse of fear. And that fear is held mostly by people who are not engaged. That fear is held mostly by people for poverty, for economic reasons, for educational reasons, who don't have the self-empowering engagement that comes from having a lawyer. So if you really are afraid that you're next, you better lawyer up if that's your fear. If you're really afraid that you're going to be next, you better get engaged with your congressman or woman and make sure that they are creating an evolution of our forefathers' Constitution and civil rights movements that have made this nation such that you can feel like it's a better home for you. You know, I've traveled to other countries. I've known lots of really wildly progressive liberals who have gone to other countries. And they keep saying that if Trump wins or whatever, they're going to go to another country. They don't. Because when you travel around the world, this place really does offer more security for a Black American than most places. And so, yes, there are some people who are venturing to the other nations. I think you should do that. I have interest in some other nations myself. But my point is that I am recognizing that you can't make it better for the person who's afraid or the person who's secure, unless you realize that both are insecure if you're not engaged in evolving our democratic republic. This is work that we have kind of been lazy to get to, and now we can't be lazy anymore. So if you are afraid, get off your butt. And we just had a public service commissioner race here in Georgia. Yeah. We had like 4% turnout.
Yep.
So obviously you ain't that afraid.
I got on the YouTube page and literally told people, because thanks to one of my mental dialogue members reminding me, I saw the voting thing and I was like, what is that? I didn't look into it, so I was lazy myself. Thanks to my member, that's why we have the club. We keep each other sharp. And I literally sent it out to all the members, go vote today, because of the low turnout, you can affect what actually happens more so, which we've talked about before.
That's correct. That is, and it actually might happen in this case. You might see some turnover of leadership from one party to the other because of this. That was a primary, so now we're going to have the general for this PSC who controls how much money you pay for, gas and water and power, folks. That's important. You got a comment there that the person saying, how do we have these rights? So you can arrest people. So yeah, there are things that are happening that are because of blurred lines. One of the things I hope, Kenny, that will come out of what we're going through here, this fight we're going through, is that we strengthen the laws that need to be strengthened. For instance, I do think that if military is out there with both a mask on and without identification, there needs to be a law that makes it obvious who police are. So I think that Republicans and Democrats should be held accountable by us, the citizens, to actually create laws that, one, yes, you should protect the police, but at the same time, you should make sure it's clear that they are the police. And I think that's a no-brainer, but you can't create that law unless you get engaged.
I love that thought. Diligence is what we're saying. And when we say raise the consciousness, politically conscious is the appropriate name for this show, because we're challenging you not to complain or believe there's nothing you can do. So that's the challenge. I'm going to play one last cut. We're definitely in extra innings. Y'all can leave if you want to, but it was just something that Brother Leo brought to us a few weeks ago on an episode explaining ranked choice voting. And I see Michael Blake, mayoral candidate for NYC. He was on the Breakfast Club. So I thought it was most appropriate that we at least bring it back to the table, because Brother Leo was highlighting, one, why we should advocate, and to his point, if we are understanding or learning not to be lazy and to engage more. He also gave us some resources on how we could push for ranked choice voting if we in fact see it like Michael Blake sees it, who says it's power to the people. So we fully explained it on a previous episode, but this is just a 2-minute clip. I'm going to close with this just to leave you there. Leo, if you have a few seconds after the 2 minutes, I would love for you to highlight how people can actually try to push for this, even in Georgia or any other place, if we believe it's something you want to do. We're not telling you to do it, but we're highlighting that it is a more powerful way to be involved, and it gets rid of some of the mudslinging that makes it hard to watch political back and forth now, where nobody actually speaks to the issue. They just saying who can one up each other, and it becomes, as Shelley said with Elon and Trump, it becomes a rap battle, which never gets to the actual fact issues that matter to us. So let me play this cut, and if y'all can stay, please do.
Because we have ranked choice voting, which started 4 years ago.
What is ranked choice voting for people that don't know?
So in New York City, you don't have to and you shouldn't just vote for one person. you should actually rank 5 people. So whoever is your first choice when you go to vote, which if that means if you vote an absentee, or if you vote in early voting goes to the 22nd, or if you wait till the 24th, your first choice, you should circle it. This is my first choice. Your second choice, all the way through. Because now the only way someone can win is if you get 50% plus 1 of votes. So whoever is the lowest vote getter in the first round gets knocked out. If Envy says, you know what, Michael Blake is my first choice, and then, Raven Robinson is my second choice, and Hannah is my third choice, Michael Blake gets knocked out, then Raven then gets the vote. So it actually gives the voter of New York more power. Because back in the day, if you only voted for one person and that person doesn't make it through a runoff, then you're done.
Right.
So what we're saying right here, in particular when it comes to Zoran and I are talking about affordability the most, right? We're real clear on, if we're serious about the number one issue that New York is talking about, is that it is crazy expensive in the city. So who has the plans around that? And I've said, I'm making it clear. I think Zoran is going to be my number 2. I'm ranking him as my number 2. Grateful that he is cross-endorsing us as well, because he's also making it clear we got to break from the corruption of Cuomo, and we got to make it clear that you can address affordability. You can do both, right? So we're going to still figure out who's the rest of the ballot. I think I'm pretty clear on the rest of that team, because you have other great candidates, Adrian Adams, Zelno Mari, Brad Lander, they're out here, doing their thing. But I want to make it very clear to New York City, you should rank Michael Blake first, especially for all the folks out here who are still trying to make their decisions. But then the cross endorsement is saying, I want you to know that there are other people on the team that I also want to make sure are on your ballot.
Leo, any thoughts? I want to let you get out of here, brother, but thank you for your extra time today.
No, did we do this before the Breakfast Club did it? Did we do our session?
Absolutely. Of course we did.
We're ahead of the game.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
And really, I just want to tell your listeners, look, ranked choice voting is going to transform not just politics, but the ability to mingle on the ideas, to have a competition of ideas, to have more ideas on the platform, to make sure that people come with the platform, just instead of, I heard, somebody run for school board. He said, I want to run for school board because the other people are racist. That was their platform. So what about helping kids learn better, man, and get jobs and, be better citizens? Now, he didn't have a platform. It was just that one thing. So if you force people to have to deal with the other person who's not just doing the partisan lines, then you're going to get better ideas at the table and you're going to be served better. Eternal vigilance action. If folks will if you got Facebook, put in your Facebook search, eternal vigilance action. Make sure you sign up to be connected with this movement for ranked choice voting. And don't be confused, because when you find out that Scott Turner, a former Republican legislator for Georgia, is one of the people leading this effort. Me, a former Republican strategist for the RNC, one of the people involved in pushing for this effort, that even the King Center supports, this work that we're doing. So this is a cross-partisan interest in making sure that more people in politics make politics more better.
And what's that word? You said people look up a
eternal vigilance action.
Is it one word or all different?
3 words. Eternal vigilance action.
All together?
3 words separately. If you put that in Facebook, you'll come up with the Facebook account for Eternal Vigilance Action. And another way to do it is, as I said last time, just go to Leo Smith Politics on my Instagram, Leo Smith Politics, one word, and just DM me and say, I want to be involved with this. I want to learn more. And I'll make sure you get on the newsletter.
Did I get it right? Did that look right? What you got?
That's correct. E. That
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Okay, eternal. I'm sorry.
Life eternal. That's
I don't want
correct.
y'all to go to the wrong thing. Let me edit it real quick.
Thank you, sir.
But no, absolutely. Again, we're trying to provide you resources and just an understanding of consciousness of how your involvement matters. I just went to that primary vote kind of thing. Thanks to my brother Be Good, one of our platinum level members, for reminding me we shouldn't turn out, reminded the club to go out and vote on Tuesday. But I would like to highlight, when people think, again, I always talk about the importance of voting. And so when you're in a primary as a independent, it's very difficult for us as independents in primaries. Like, I literally go there and there's this new Republican that I would like to take out the actual the actual incumbent, but then I also have the Democrats that I want to vote for as well, just as like that's what I would like to do. And both parties specifically, and there's a reason for it, make it difficult for people like me to vote. And I highlight what people miss. If their vote was not important, they wouldn't make it difficult for any of us to vote.
Hello.
The fact that they make it difficult, they trick you into thinking, because again, as I always highlight, about 34% of the country decides the president. You got the 60% that's split for who the president is, and the other 30% who is not involved. But if it was not important, those neither party would make it hard for someone like myself. And both parties do it. They're always willing to avoid your vote if it's not for them. So they don't even want to allow me to jump between. I have to say, all right, what's one of these is the most important for me to vote, because I can't vote for everybody I would like to. And again, I'm not making it personal. I'm trying to get you to understand the concept. The reasons they make it difficult, it is beneficial for them. But the main reason that is because my one vote matters. They wouldn't make it difficult if it didn't matter like people suggest. So that's the last thing I got for you. Emil, one last thought and we out of here.
I appreciate Leo and you, Montoya. You guys are bringing the heat. And one of the reasons why I'm so thankful we do this show is because we're bringing up stuff that people don't ordinarily hear. And that's what I ask everybody to do. When you hear something unfamiliar, Google it, sit down and look for some resources that help you unpack this stuff. Because if we take what people say at face value, we're going to be twisted in the wind. Leo talked about people, reptilians and aliens and all kind of stuff happening. When in fact, we got hungry kids in school that need to learn stuff and they can't because they don't have the resources to learn. They don't have the food to eat. Their bellies are distractions. Those are real problems that we can solve with votes, believe it or not. And as hard as I can be, the one thing I will tell every viewer, if you're listening, figure out how you can play the game, because they're waiting for you. They don't know they're waiting for you until you show up, but they need you. They need you to participate somehow, some way, whether you volunteer, whether you vote consistently in every election, whether you support the election process, whether you work inside a party or in an organization. But you got to play this game, because these people who are playing it are running a game on us, and we do not see it because we're not in it. So get in it so you can unpack what they're doing. And if you need to, fight from within the system and definitely from without.
I love it. And I'll just leave with one last thought. This last thing, again, this is a local state election, making the difference at a time right now of whether there's a cap on gas and utilities. Like, let's not act like when somebody goes, what has voting gotten you? We'll see. You got the free market people and you got the people that says, let's keep the cap. I don't know who's right, but don't tell me you don't get anything with your vote.
Well, I can tell you how it happened real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
So that's my work. One of the things I'm
Thank
lobbying for is for a citizens utilities council to give citizens more say in what's happening with the rates that they pay. And guess what? It scared Georgia Power so much. It scared the PSC so much that's why Georgia Power came out and said, we're going to freeze the rates. They wanted to stop the conversation that we were creating in our campaign by saying, no worry, have a hearing. We'll just freeze it. That's what happened.
For like 3 years, right? I think it was like 3 years or something.
Correct. Now, that means that we don't have to be
so they wanted to go away. That's why they was willing.
They want us to go away. They're hiring my colleagues. They're doing all kinds of stuff. Right.
That's the proof, y'all.
Your engagement brings power to its knees.
Locally, more so than who the president is. That'll always be my personal reminder to everyone that watches our show. Thank y'all for a great show. See y'all next week. We'll pop up on y'all.
Peace.
Subscribe to the page, y'all, and share this show with others.